and that is religious liberty. Religious liberty is the basic idea that how you worship is none of the government's business. Government can wage wars, government can write parking tickets, but government cannot save souls. Government's really important. War is important. Parking tickets are important. But your soul is something that the government can't touch. So whether you worship in a mosque or a synagogue or a church, your faith or your lack of faith is none of the government's business. It's your business and your families and your neighbors and all sorts of places where people break bread together and argue, but it's not about power, it's not about force, it's not about the government. This is the fundamental American belief. Religious liberty is one of those 5 great freedoms clustered in the First Amendment. Religion, speech, press, assembly, and protest. These 5 freedoms that hang together that are the basic pre-governmental rights are sort of civics 101 that we all agree on well before we ever get to anything as relatively inconsequential as tax policy. So civics should be the stuff we affirm together. And contrary to the belief of some activists, religious liberty is not an exception. You don't need the government's permission to have religious liberty. Religious liberty is the default assumption of our entire system. And because religious liberty is the fundamental 101 rule in American life, we don't have religious tests. This committee isn't in the business of deciding whether the dogma lives too loudly within someone. This committee isn't in the business of deciding which religious beliefs are good and which religious beliefs are bad and which religious beliefs are weird. And I just want to say, as somebody who's self-consciously a Christian, we got a whole bunch more really weird beliefs. Forgiveness of sins, the virgin birth, resurrection from the dead, eternal life. There are a whole bunch of really, really crazy ideas that are a lot weirder than some Catholic moms giving each other advice about parenting. And yet there are places where this committee has acted like it's the job of the committee to delve into people's religious communities. That's nuts. That's a violation of our basic civics. That's a violation of what all of us believe together. This is not a Republican idea. It is not a Democrat idea. It's a Democrat idea and a Republican idea, but more fundamentally, it's an American idea. And the good news is, whether you think your religious beliefs might be judged wacky by someone else, it's none of the business of this committee to delve into any of that in this context. Because in this committee and in this Congress and in this constitutional structure, religious liberty is the basic truth. And whatever you or I or Judge Barrett believe about God isn't any of the government's business. We can all believe in that in common. We should all reaffirm that in common. And that should be on display over the course of the next 4 days in this committee.